Barrow 22. We had a viewing on this one from someone who was with us in the crowd that day.
Dr. Hideous said that Barrow were unexpectedly poor at the start, managed to pull back by half-time, but a bad start to the second half as well killed them. Sheffield were up to 20 points ahead before Barrow woke up and started to play again, but it was too late.
Yeah, I think Corey Aston obviously was the star of the show, back on loan from Castleford.
I was thinking about this. It's quite impressive. He's managed to play for one club, but being employed by 3 different clubs. That's quite an achievement.
So he was the star of the show for them, and played a big role in this game actually. In the end, with 20 of the 38 points for Sheffield being scored by him. Probably Barrow slipped behind too much early doors in that second half, and that was the real problem period for them. Then Jamie Dallymore kind of tried to pull off a few different things, and they didn't all come off when they were chasing the game, and it didn't go their way. But it was quite an exciting, high-scoring start to the Summer Bash. Also, the people in the south end of the stadium told me.
It's a shame it's not like non-league football where you can just switch at half-time.
Well, you probably could have switched to the Summer Bash. The Stewards might have asked a couple of questions, but they couldn't really stop you with how many empty seats there were. Yeah. The second game on the Saturday was Halifax 24, Featherston 18. The Featherston-Blackpool curse continues despite having the shirts of the round.
They were brilliant. I love those.
Yeah, I thought Ben Johnston, the halfback for Halifax, was really good in this game. Scott Morrell alongside him was very influential as well. Scored 2 important tries for his Halifax side, and really they weathered the storm in the start of the second half, did Halifax, and they just about held on to win this game. So credit to them, because they're one of the few sides who went twice in this. Yeah. In the Summer Bash. Most sides either had a lead at half time and got scuppered in the second half, or just kind of were consistent throughout. But Halifax had to show some mettle towards the closing stage of this game, and they did that, and they won. A big win for them, making the top 4 in reach, certainly. The main event on day one, probably the main event of the whole weekend, was Toronto 28, Leigh Centurions 26. This was very exciting. We had a few views from people in on this one.
Genghis Campbell said, "My tummy hurts. How exactly did we win this game?" He's obviously a Toronto fan. 10 tries, last gasp missed penalty, and all-in head coach wrestling at the end of the game. Lamport Stadium should be hopping on the 9th of June.
Yep. Sarah said, ultimately, ill discipline leading to a sin binning cost Leigh the victory, together with the questionable missed penalty kick.
We'll come to that in a minute. Martin Simpson said, like the first game, Leigh started with a point to prove. Their line speed was impressive and Toronto couldn't get going. The few penalties were punished by both teams. Older players and Bailey's failed head test meant they tired. The yellow card was right, but I didn't expect a comeback. Looking forward to the next fixture and hope, like all Toronto games, both teams and fans will enjoy the post-game beer garden together.
Yep. Hopefully, because there's a lot of negativity now towards the Wolfpack. Hopefully that won't spill into the Lamport Stadium, and the party atmosphere that they've managed to create after their home games will continue to exist. Brian Davies said, Paul Rowley, what a grub. Never been a fan of him or his team. Surely his days at Toronto must be numbered. The club has done so many things right, but he is damaging the brand. Good win for the Wolfpack, though. Yeah, I mean, this is probably
this is the story it's going to take over. It is the last couple of minutes, and then after the game and all the shenanigans.
Yeah, and it does seem that it was that there was a lot of Leigh fan vitriol towards a couple of the players, that their former players who they feel abandoned them. I don't quite see it that way, but that's how they see it. And also, the head coach of the Wolfpack and what he got up to at the end of the game. Now, what we all saw looked like Rowley was the aggressor of that situation. He certainly was talking to Kieran Purtill in an aggressive manner, wasn't he, before Jamie Acton stepped in and things got tasty. But
I mean, who's surprised? Who's surprised that Jamie Acton to get involved in a situation that's developing?
Well, it's sticking up for his head coach. I don't. Of all the Jamie Acton behaviours. I kind of get this one, but yeah, it's not a shock that he was the first man there. Of all the, but that was what we saw. But what's been reported is that it was more the assistant coaching staff from the Leigh Centurions kind of trying to wind up maybe a couple of the Wolfpack players at half time. Am I right in the story? Was Paul Anderson squirted water at someone?
All I heard was there was a fracas in the tunnel, and that's as much as...
Yeah, and that kind of kicked things off. And then at the end of the game, he was a bit argy-bargy apparently again, and that kind of stirred things up again, and that's what got Rowley so annoyed. And then there was no handshake, and they kind of... In the end, it was all maybe sorted out until the Leigh fans got themselves around the Toronto Wolfpack coach afterwards. Now, I didn't see any of this. I'm guessing I'd long gone,
or you were too busy enjoying your free pie.
Or I was too drunk. Yeah, we were enjoying the free pies at that stage. They were much needed to soak up some of the beer that had been drank for sure. And great at warming our hearts after seeing no tries to get the free pies was a great thing. But yeah, all that shenanigans aside, the game itself, really, Leigh played a lot better for most of the game than the Wolfpack did, and you got to credit the Wolfpack for sticking in and not letting it slide, because all the best players on the pitch, I felt like, were in the Leigh shirts. Matautia or Matatia or whatever the pronunciation is now.
The interesting thing was, I did write something down on this, that it did look, when there was one shot of him, it did look like his legs were incredibly shiny, like they were shaved. So I don't.
Well, maybe that's how he keeps his pace up, because he's getting on a bit now.
Made himself as aerodynamically as possible.
Yeah, I thought that the Centurions forwards were very, very strong in the game, and Ben Reynolds, I've said this oftentimes on this show, he should be playing in the Super League. I think he's good enough, and I think he played really well again. So really unfortunate on him to just narrowly miss with the penalty attempt at the end. It was a shame that it was a penalty. So the cameras didn't go and get him behind it. I mean, they probably could have done, but if it didn't go dead, then they couldn't be on the pitch, could they? So it meant we didn't have a conclusive angle, and we were all arguing amongst ourselves about whether it went over or not. But I thought at the time it went just left, and watching the TV footage, I'm convinced it did bend just to the left. To me,
watching it on spec, it looked just in real time. It looked good, and it also a bit odd that Sky didn't replay it for quite a while. They carried on chatting and whatever before actually going back to it, so you couldn't get an instant replay of it.
I just think they were scrambling around to see if any of the cameramen had a good replay, probably. And then they realised
Eddie was convinced he'd score it. So we've got to trust him.
Well, I trust
his eyes have
myself.
failed us, have they?
No, I trusted myself on it, but it was very, very close, and certainly if they had taller goalposts at Bloomfield Road, we might have been a different outcome. Potentially, I think it would have hit the post and gone wide, or just edged wide of the posts, but what have you. Credit to the Toronto try that they scored to win the game as well, and also credit to Ryan Briley, because his goal kicking has been absolutely abysmal.
As soon as he lined up for the kick, I was like, oh, there we go. That's your prediction come true.
Yeah, but in face of the hostile Centurions fans towards him, he did really, really well with his goal kicking in this game. Maybe that spurred him on and dragged his concentration in a little bit more. But the try that Corey Patterson scored was really good play, I thought. There was a few offloads in there, keeping the ball alive, getting it wide. I know they had an extra man by that stage, and I think it was a clear high tackle, running in at pace and taking out a guy who potentially was going in towards the try line. He probably wasn't going to score, but in that direction, I thought it was a fair call.
I didn't have a problem with that. I think that the action was fairly warranted.
But up until that point,
it looked to me like Leigh had been actually very well coached. They'd studied how the Wolfpack playing. They knew what the best game was to try and keep it as close or beat them. And I thought Kieran Purtell and his staff had done some good work and working out the best way to play against them. And they really kept the pace up to them and made it hard for them. And I think that all credit to them. I think they did a really good job up till the last sort of 10 minutes of really actually taking the game to him.
think they did a good job of taking the energy out of the back three as well. There was only really, the good try O'Brien scored to start the second half. But other than that, those guys were all about the work and the effort, Kay O'Brien and Russell. But there wasn't a lot of end product from any of them. And I think that was really well worked by the Leigh side, certainly. But maybe just they ran out a bit of gas dealing with having probably the bigger bodies out there. Greg Richards is a big lad. Harrison Hampson, Bodie and Thompson aren't the youngest lads, and neither's Mickey Hyam. Nathan Mason's a big lad, and Ryan Bailey was off the field, obviously, with his failed concussion test. Maybe that played a huge role in this. A draw would have been a fair result as well, because, Leigh deserves something out of the game. I think that they played very well, so they shouldn't be too knocked by this in terms of how they go forward with the rest of the season, is my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Okay, shall we move into Sunday?
Yes.
Whilst you were diving somewhere off in the English Channel, Toulouse from the other side of the English Channel were beating the London Broncos 40 points to 28 in what was one of the most exciting games of the weekend, but not to everyone's taste. Do you want to take us through the fan review?
We'll start with Paul Chamberlain, who says Summer Gash, a decent advert for the Championship. Brackets Sky take note, but also a summary of all London's failings. 4 more intercepts when on the opponent's line. Dixon running, being pushed into touch twice when in R20, and a right-hand defence weaker than Jeremy Beadle's. You bet. Channing is also a disaster and must have pictures of the coach. Onwards and upwards to away defeats to Toulouse and Toronto, finishing 5th.
Well, that's not positive, is it? Dr. Hideous said, against the good Toulouse defence, the Broncos had no choice but to shift the ball about a bit, and it worked for at least as far as offence went. Unfortunately, it also let Toulouse make several interceptions. Thank all the gods that Toulouse's big players just weren't that fast, and that many of the breaks that came from those interceptions could be chased down. A good, entertaining game despite losing.
Yeah, Mitchell Dart said, can Mark Kerala win Man of Steel from the Championship? Surely he's a chance.
Brian Davies said, really enjoyed this one. Toulouse are a very good side with the threats across the park. Make a top 4 will earn them some good money to invest in their club further before their ground improvements are completed for 2020 and hopefully Super League. Yeah, the scoreline tells you that this was an enjoyable game. The highlights tell you that it was. The first try scored by Tony Morell after great work from Mark Corella, and a really sharp piece of work as well from James Worthington, the on-loan Wigan youngster who was playing on the wing, who scored the second try for Toulouse. All down the other end, obviously.
Of course.
At least we got to see the genesis of those tries, because they were long-range breakaway situations that have been touched upon. But Toulouse really were entertaining in this game. London did their best, but it obviously broke down with Michael Channing playing at standoff.
He's not a standoff.
He's a passable centre. He's not a standoff in any way, shape or form. So that hurt. They also started with Matt Davis at hooker, which was a weird choice, and it wasn't very long into the game that they were 12-0 down, and they brought James Cunningham on to try and change that up a little bit. I think after that point they really did improve as a side, London, and Jared Samet scored an individual try that was very reminiscent of one of his tries in his hat-trick for Whitehaven a couple of years ago. Did he play for Whitehaven or Workington? Whichever one
of them. Somewhere up there.
Yeah, the one he played for, the hat-trick he scored 2 years ago at the Summer Bash. It was very reminiscent of that, one of the tries in that run. But really, Toulouse were the better side throughout, I felt, and other than a few errors on their own line that kind of let in a couple of tries for the Broncos, it could have been a bigger margin, which is a little bit worrying for London. It's not quite as doom and gloom as Paul went with. I don't feel personally. I think he should be a bit more optimistic. I just think Toulouse were a better team on the day and had the better performers on the day. I got a picture taken with Joe Breverton, the Wigan loanee, and I think this was the first meaningful action he's had this year. First meaningful action he's had for almost
I thought you were going to say it's the first photo he'd been asked for this year.
It possibly was as well, because he hasn't played enough games. But yeah, hopefully someone will snap him up for next year. I think he can really do a top job for any team in the Championship, and he wouldn't let anyone down in the Super League necessarily. But if one of these top Championship clubs takes a chance on him with a a deal for next year and beyond, I certainly think they won't be disappointed. And I thought he put in every time I was watching him